G'day guys and girls, Jake here from What's Up Mate, the podcast for Australian electricians and refrigeration techs. So today I'm going to talk about residential on-call for your maintenance sparkies out there. The reason I sort of want to do this is we've got some pretty poor weather coming in for Adelaide in the next couple of days. And I know for us, we're going to get a lot of after-hours calls or emergency calls that are going to be on top of our existing workload. Now, I want to sort of run through a couple of stories, why being on call is unique, some practical tips, and some lessons sort of I've learnt on my journey through doing on-call work and still doing it. So, example, this weekend, Saturday, I got a message from one of our real estate clients asking if we could get somebody out to do on-call. Now, a lot of sparkies will advertise 24/7 emergency call-outs, but then not answer your phone. So I guess if you're a business owner looking for that on-call work, and if you're advertising and spending money on, whether it's Facebook targeted ads or Google ads or whatever your marketing strategy might be, if you're going to market yourself as 24/7, if the phone rings after hours, make sure you answer it, or make sure you got a phone system that will, if you miss a call, send the client a message to say, hey, yeah, we acknowledge your phone call, can't get to the phone right now. If you'd like us to continue this conversation over text, press yes, or something like that, just to make sure that you're not missing those leads, because it is wasted money, and you're also selling your client short. Just think you're in a state of distress, and you make a phone call to somebody who reckons they're 24/7 and they can solve your problems, just to get a message bank and no response. So just keep that one in the back of your mind for you guys that are out there that are advertising 24/7. It's important to make sure you follow up with that with your clients, especially if it's part of your service contracts as well. Really important to maintain that. So yeah, I had a call out on Saturday around lunchtime. Got there first of all, I sort of set the expectations of the tenants. I was at the kids' footy. Wanted to just say to them, yep, we've got the emergency work order through from our client. I'll be there within 2 hours. So I've given them a window of when I am expected. I got there sort of within the hour, which is pretty good. We were wrapping up at footy, so it was probably good timing. And I get there. Unfortunately, there was a bit of a language barrier, so I couldn't get a lot of info from the tenants about what the story was. But all basically, they said, we've got no power. My first point of call for that was I actually checked the SA Power Network's current outages map just to make sure that it wasn't an SA Power fault. So if you're in the Eastern States or Northern Territory or the Western Australia, Tassie, wherever you might be, you have a similar, I imagine you would have a similar site that's available to you to just check like recent outages or planned outages, in fact, as well. So yeah, nothing was showing on the SA Power Network's outages map. So I headed out there. It was only half an hour drive, and on my drive in, I suppose a tip for the on-call sparkies is have a bit of a think about, possibly like in your experience, what could it be? Whole house without power. Could you just have a common RCD and it's just failed and you might not have any power? Or coming through that, or could it be a burnt out service fuse or something like that? So there's a few options, obviously, with like no power is a pretty broad thing. Some people think having no lights means they've got no power. Some people that think they have no power points not working, it's no power. So obviously it's going to be case by case. So if you can get any info from the tenants or even some photos of the switchboard, just so you sort of know what you're up against, that's a really good start. So I got to this job and had a bit of a chat to the clients. They've just said had no power. We had power for lights, but our air conditioner wasn't working. And then all of a sudden we lost lights and power. So I was like, all right. So obviously, for those in the know, home battery system So the emergency circuits on that was power lights. Air conditioner was excluded from that, which is pretty general what happens there. So the client just thought maybe there was an issue with the air conditioner, and then their Tesla went flat, and then they lost all power. So went out there. First thing we did was check the main meter board. So I had a meter board and a sub board here, and noticed that the meters were both off and that the meter isolator was off. Now in this instance, it was a 2-phase property and a 32 amp meter isolator. Now the meter isolator is brand new, so it was a Hager branded meter isolator, so you're pretty certain that wasn't going to be a drama. I did a few tests on the load side of the meter isolator just to make sure we didn't have any shorts to earth or to neutral. Now it's really hard to do a to neutral test, shorts for neutral test with the metering installed, because if you put your like insulation meter across line and neutral, you'll actually get a short reading. So visually inspected behind the metering, make sure there's no obvious signs of burns, removed my MEN link and just checked the load side of that meter isolator to earth for both phases, and then neutral to earth as well. That was all sweet. So did all that, checked out the Tesla the gateway, made sure that there was no circuit stripped in there, checked the subboard, no circuit stripped in there, quick visual on all the connections in there, all sweet. Now I noticed, I guess this is probably experience more than anything, but air conditioner was a Daikin 16 kilowatt ducted on one phase, cooktop was also on the same phase, electric cooktop on the same phase. They had a gas hot water service, but that was about the only the only gas appliance in the home. So we're almost talking an all-electric home here. So there was no heating that was gas, no cooking that was gas. It was all electric. So 32 amps, split across, 2 phases of 32 amps is not a whole lot for these modern homes that we're getting now. So this was an older home that's had multiple renovations done. So I was pretty happy. I was like, yep, sweet. I've done my tests. I've done a bit of a visual on everything, turned the meter oscillator back on, and thankfully, everything was all sweet. It was a nice and easy one. But you don't often get those creamy fault finds. There's often, when you're on call, it often seems to be you sort of get the doozies. So in my experience, if you can get, well, I guess from the get-go, from even getting the call or the job card landing on your job management system, however you receive them, is read through the job notes, make contact with the client and see, hey, what's the story? You might be able to get some extra info out of them, like, we smelled smoke in the house and then we lost all power. All right, no worries. Or you might go, we go to the switchboard and we try to reset the safety switch and it just doesn't want to reset. So you can really easily talk the client through perhaps how you might be able to get them some power before you attend, because it's also might be you might have a list of 10, 15 jobs depending on how busy your on-call is. So you might have to almost triage them, which ones are urgent, which ones are not urgent. If you can get a client some power before even attending site, you might be able to bump them down the list a bit in terms of urgency, or even push them through to the next day when you're not on overtime and costing them a fortune, etc. So getting some information before you start is a really good way of doing things. Another really important thing to do is make sure, if you're on call or you're self-employed and you've got a big storm coming, make sure you've got things like your batteries are all charged for your tools, your head torch is all charged up, ready to go. You've got your basic stock of general items in your van, like things like main switches. They seem to burn out quite easily. Switch enclosures like your 4cc 1s, 2s and 3s for your main switches that might be surface mounted, especially those old Clipser ones, like they're 50 amps or whatever they are, the black ones that are mounted generally directly onto the Bakelite. They really always seem to burn out only in wintertime. It's bizarre, or we see them more burnt out in wintertime here in Adelaide anyway. I think because people are using electric heaters more often, things like that, so more current flowing through them. If they've got a pitted contact, they'll arc out. So also things like safety switches. So 2-pole safety switches, 3-pole safety switches, and in my bus I keep like a 40 amp single and a 63 amp 2-pole. So one that'll be like a single phase, and then I'll also keep a 40 amp and a 63 amp 3-phase RCBO, so a 4-pole. That pretty well covers you for most faulty RCDs that way. You can certainly limp them through with that sort of arsenal in your car as well. Making sure you've got some stock of RCBOs as well, of all sizes, because we know there's some poor branded RCBOs out there that, their quality's not quite up there, and they might have a fault. It might trip. You might clear the fault on the circuit, but then perhaps your RCBO won't trip, or it won't pass any of your injection tests or your push button tests. So it's just important to make sure you've got simple stuff like that on board. Also just a mix of just power points, switches, things like that, because sometimes you might get the while you're here as well. I don't like doing the while you're here jobs while I'm there after hours, because it's just costs the client a bit more money. But if it's part of the fault, it's also nice to have a new PowerPoint or something like that. We had one during the week where we had multiple PowerPoints with water ingress in a kitchen and through a house after some really wet weather. So just, keeping basic stock in your cars, having your batteries charged for your tools and your head torches, things like that, it's going to make your life a little bit easier. If you're on call, it is tricky. Like you want to still live your life, but perhaps have that chat with your partner. Hey, look, unfortunately I'm on call for this week. More than happy to try to make arrangements with you around, like, hey, we might have kids' birthday parties to go to, we've got kids' sport, etc. Just communicate that with your partner or your spouse. Just say, hey, there's a chance I might get called out. There's a chance that I might not get called out, but at the moment, unfortunately, I'm going to have to be readily available to leave, unfortunately, if I have to. So have a think about how being on call might affect your family, or I guess if you don't have a family yet, how it's going to affect your social life, and what you might need to do to negate any issues that might cause. So for example, if I'm on call, if we're going to kids' sport and we might be out in the middle of nowhere, and for our business, like emergency call-outs, we like to be there within 2 hours. It might be a case of taking my work vehicle with me, or my private car separately, and my wife Kerry, she can take the kids in her car. If I have to shoot off, I just take my car and go swap the work van over, and off I go, or I just take the work van. It just honestly depends on where we are and what we're expecting. I guess setting those clear expectations as well with your kids, because unfortunately they don't want to see mum or dad take off in the middle of a sporting event, but hey, I'm going to be here for the whole game. I might have to leave. If I'm leaving, it's not because I want to, it's because I've got a commitment, unfortunately. And I think that as a parent, that actually also sets a very good example for your children. Hey, unfortunately, if you've got a job in the trades, you might have to put that aside while you're on call for that week, etc. And it's also just about open communication with everybody too. Cool. So depending on how busy your on-call period is, fatigue's going to be a pretty good thing we're going to have to manage. Your company policy might be that you just work through no matter what. I don't agree with that, but if you're working solo in the electrical field, safety first always. Perhaps if you've got somebody in your business that you could say, hey, I'm going out to this job, I've not had a lot of sleep, is it all right if I touch base with you once when I'm leaving and when I'm getting there, just so you know that I'm where I am, what's going on. You've also, while you're fatigued, got to try to keep a really, really clear train of thought about the faults you're attending, what you can do to resolve them safely and quickly for your clients, without getting yourself in, I guess, a bit of a tiz, where you just want to make sure that you're still thinking clearly and concisely. So what you eat and what you drink while you're on call is going to be really, really important. What you fuel your body with in general, even for anybody is if you're eating crap food, you're going to perform poorly like with any part of life. So just while you're on call, especially long hours, I know it's tempting to eat poorly while you're on call because it's quick, it's easy. You might be craving that salt and that sugar. But just try to make sure you're keeping your diet up to speed. It's going to really help you with clear train of thought as well. So always start with the basics. Like my first, like I've done a podcast on this before, but some real quick tips is quiz the clients on what they've experienced in the past or when the fault happened, because they might be able to provide you some insight. Just remember to take it with a grain of salt because they could be leading you up the garden path a little bit. You're the professional, not them. No power fault, always confirm supply to the property first, whether that's SA Power Networks or whatever, to make sure there's no outages in the street. When you get to site, check your main switches, check all your circuit breakers like power in, power out for all of them, because it might be something as simple as a internally failed circuit breaker or main switch that's preventing power to the house. Once you've done that and if you've got like a tripped RCD, then it's just your standard RCD test, like your fault testing procedures, which I've done a podcast on this in the past. But just removing tails, testing the cables separate, etc. Being really methodical so you're not chasing your tail. And don't just stop. A real good tip is don't just stop fault finding at the switchboard when you found one fault, especially for common RCDs. Because you might actually have two circuits that are down to earth or that with low insulation resistance to earth. So it could be that cumulative effect of parallel paths reducing insulation resistance. So really, really important to strip the tails, test it all, make sure you don't have potentially multiple faults. I've been caught out on that as an apprentice a few times, and it wasn't until I really sort of sat down and thought about what I was doing in the process I could change to make that myself more efficient. But there's nothing worse than thinking you've solved a problem and then you turn the power back on and the client rings you back and says, hey, yeah, we've still got this problem, and you've spent a couple of hours there already. So I guess also know your limits. So when you're too tired and when you might go, hey, nah, I'm too tired to do this job, let's get you patched up, ready to go, so you've got some power, and come back during normal business hours, or get some of your team members back during normal business hours to rectify the fault. Or if it's not even a tired thing, it might just be an availability of spare parts, or it might be an issue with the supply authority. And then you just be like, hey, I've done what I can. I've left an authority to connect form in the switchboard and I've emailed the COC through to SA Power Networks. I've done all I can do, and then advise the client that you've given them the faults number. Say, hey, if you're unsure, at this point the job's out of my hands. SA Power Networks or your supply, whoever your supply authority is, will be back out to re-energise the home. And just set that and be like, I can't even give you an estimated time of arrival for them. When they are here, they could take an hour or so to actually get power back on, and they might actually leave your main switch off. So I recommend you sticking around until they return, because SA Power Networks will not re-energise an installation, they'll re-energise the installation up to the main switch, but they will leave the main switch off in case you're out and you've left an iron on or an oven. So just, set that expectation with the client even from the get-go, and stay calm. Troubleshooting under pressure is difficult, especially at 2 a.m. when you might have a buddy at work that you like to bounce ideas off of when you're at a fault, or ask them questions if you're not sure of something. It's really important just to stay calm. If you can't figure it out, don't stress. In my experience, if you just remove yourself from that situation for 5-10 minutes, grab a coffee, have a sit down in the van, just sort of try to disconnect from work for a little bit, do that, go back into it, and it's amazing how many times you go, oh, it's this, when you get back to that fault. So just check it out. So some interesting faults have been generally caused by water ingress, fire from like poor connections, birds getting into roof spaces. They love to eat the insulation off cables, and they can cause all sorts of dramas, not just in one particular spot of the roof, but maybe all over. And I guess something I wish I sort of knew when I first attended my first ever call out, I suppose, as an apprentice still, was the clients are expecting you to know what you're doing, and they're expecting you to get their power on, in a timely fashion, and they're expecting you to be quite professional about it. So if you attend and you're a little bit, I remember when my first one, I was stressing. I was stressing hard, and I honestly think that the clients could sense that in a way. Like, God, does this guy know what he's doing? Like they were almost second guessing what I was doing, and that makes it really, really hard. So if you can rock up, clean uniform, your work truck's organised, you've got all your batteries, you've got everything, you look in control, your client's going to think you're in control, and it's just going to set you up for success. So I guess top 3 tips for surviving on-call work is just be transparent with your partners and your kids, if you've got kids, because they're the rocks. They're the ones that are, you might be the one out at work, working late, etc., but they're the ones at home holding the fort for you. So that's number 1. Number 2, just ensuring, sleep when you can, eat when you can, and go to the toilet when you can. Honestly, that's number 2. You just gotta be, you can't help anybody if you're run down. And number 3 is just make sure that your work vehicle is fully stocked. I might actually do a list and post it up on the socials about sort of what we carry and why we carry it. Like things, RCDs, main switches, authority to connect forms that we have to fill out manually for loss of supply for SA Power, just things like that are really important. So if you've got any funny on-call stories, whether or not somebody's pet made your life a little bit of interesting. I had a dog once that actually ran off with a couple of my screwdrivers, little puppy once. Good fun. I've been on a roof working at a school, and the kids, this was years ago as an apprentice, actually took my ladder for a bit of a walk while I was up on the roof during their lunchtime. Just if you've got any funny stories like that, I think that's probably the best part of being on call and getting stuff done. But if there's also some negative things of being on call, it's the added stress. It's your work-life balance when you're on call, it sort of really feels like it's leaning to one side. You might get a week where you're on call, you're getting paid to be on call, but you might not get a job, and that also sucks as well, because you've put your life on hold for a week, and you've got a small amount of remuneration for being on call, but you're not getting that big paycheck because you've not actually attended any calls. So it is a tricky one to be on call. Some guys love it, some guys hate it. Unfortunately, with the electrical industry, if your business that you're working with or for or you own markets themselves as 24/7, there's a big chance that you're going to end up on call once your employer deems you capable. Obviously, you don't have to do it. If you're lucky enough to have a big company with multiple people working in it, you might be able to swap your on-call rosters. But if just a little tip, I guess a bit of professional courtesy, if you ask somebody to cover you, say an apprentice or something like that, for your on-call, try and make sure you're available for any phone calls while you're on, while they're on call for you, if that makes sense. So because otherwise, if they try to ring you for a little bit of help and you don't answer your phone, very, very unlikely they're going to want to say yes to taking you on call again. Just try to be a bit thoughtful when you are on call, and if you're covering on call, or if you've asked somebody to be on call for you. Because you don't want to be leaving anyone high and dry in that instance. So just a real quick, easy one, just on what to sort of expect as an on-call Sparky, and some tips there. if you guys and girls like this podcast, please share it with your mates. I'm just trying to get this podcast out there to as many young or old Sparkies or Fridgies or aircon techs that are out there. I'm just trying to boost the open communication in our industry, because I think a lot of tradespeople, especially the older generation, hold a lot of knowledge close to their chest. I sort of want to get that out there for everybody to learn and make the trades great again. So thanks to everyone for listening. Tune in. We'll do another one next week. We might even just delve into what we got up to for the faults after this storm. I'm sure we're going to have a long list of them. So, yeah, thank you again, and we'll speak to you later on. Catch ya.